Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics Podcast. I'm Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel, and with me today I've got a very special guest, and I will try to pronounce his name. It is Jaime Van Kessel.
Yeah, that's pretty
Did I get
close.
it? Oh,
Yeah,
damn.
Jaime Van Kessel.
Thank you. I appreciate that because honestly, I only rehearsed it the one time and then I forgot
Yeah.
all about it because,
You did pretty good. You did pretty good.
Well, I appreciate it. So I know a little bit about you. We chatted on Twitter a little bit, but for the viewers out there, can you let everyone know who you are, what you do, where we might know you from?
Yeah, so I'm Jaime Van Kessel. I work as a software architect for Ultimaker, and specifically I work as the software architect of Cura, the 3D slicer. And I've been doing that for, I think almost 9.5 years now. So I've been with Ultimaker from the very early start when the company just graduated from somebody's garage. And yeah, we started in this building where we had to put like pots and pans around to keep the water from leaking in. Yeah, so that's where I started, and yeah, I'm still working there.
And I have to say, on behalf of the 3D printing community, who I don't really speak for, but thank you very much for a awesome free piece of software. I've recently started using Prusa Slicer for one very difficult 3D printer that I have here, and I was gonna try it because I've been using Cura from the get-go. I was gonna try it out, but I have to bring all my machines over, whereas in Cura they were there already. They had presets. So as someone who was a beginner not that long ago, I have to thank you very much for putting way more models into your slicer to get people like me started much quicker.
So I love to take sort of credit for that, but well, I can to some degree, but most of the 3D printers that are in Cura are actually from community contributions. So I from the get go pushed very hard to make like this configuration file based setup for all the 3D printers in Cura that made all of that possible. But the fact that we have literal hundreds of machines in there, I just built the system. I didn't provide any of those settings. Ultimaker just provides the setting files for the Ultimaker machines, and we put a lot of money and effort into tweaking them. But for all of the other machines, can't really take that credit.
No, and it's not a thing about credit though, but it's
No.
just it's something about the organizational philosophy that I appreciate. Like the community, the maker community will often take care of itself, but it still needs the tools in order to do that. So people like you steer these decisions. I know that you have a voice in these decisions, and this is what I'm very appreciative for.
Yeah. I mean, it's to call it that is, of course, that's a decision that needed to be defended is perhaps also a bit much, but I think it's the same as sort of to draw the analogy with a relationship. Even though that you're very happy together, it still means that you got to work on it. And that, of course, has always been a thing within any company. You got to keep the spirit alive, and this notion on why do we do things the way that we do, and that, of course, that does take work. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you have a coding background, right? You were telling me in the green room.
Yeah. So originally, my bachelor was in media technology, so that was a pretty broad education, and I started to do that because originally I actually wanted to go into game development. But when I started, there wasn't really a game industry in the Netherlands, so I kind of wanted to hedge my bets. So I went with had something that was a bit broader. So it had game design and game development and all that kind of stuff in it, but it also had like human technology interaction, but also broadcasting in it. But during that time, I quickly realized that although it's nice to know something about all of those other things, my passion was definitely within software engineering. And yeah, so for my master, I went on to the university, and then because in the Netherlands we've got this weird system where we've got different types of universities, but all of them give you a bachelor. I won't bore anyone with the details. So I went on to the university and I did what's it called again? Game and media technology. And that's also how I ended up with Ultimaker for my graduation thesis, where I worked at the Ultimaker to develop a structured light scanner.
Nice. Actually, I'm always curious. What's it like working for a company like Ultimaker? Are they? I mean, they seem very tech forward and they seem very maker focused. Is this how it works inside the organization, or is that just kind of their public face?
Well, I mean, it's not really a surprise that Ultimaker, of course, used to be much more maker centered than it is right now, right? So, I mean, back in the day when we started, we've had, we had just the Ultimaker original, which was clearly not a product that was in any way intended for a business, right? It was this plywood kit that you had to assemble yourself, and it took most people like 16 hours to do that, and it required a lot of tweaking, and we still had like public wiki pages that explained you how to do it. But of course, over time we did drift towards more and more of like a business to business company, and then mostly focusing on like the smaller or at a medium sized companies, or and mostly is what Ultimaker calls the sort of the desktop printing side of things. So not there you have like this printer that is on wheels and is almost like an entire cupboard on its own, but you can actually put on your desk. But of course, I mean, in a company that when I started 9 years ago was like 18 people, and now it's like 300. It will go through phases and changes quite a lot.
Oh, absolutely. But
Yeah.
like, even so, like, okay, so I guess Ultimakers, they're a bit of an upmarket product these days. They're definitely they're. I mean, let's be honest. They're no Ender 3.
Oh yeah, but I
They're
mean,
not the same thing at all.
we quickly realized that we can't really participate to the race to the bottom.
That's right.
You're gonna lose that.
Especially, yeah, of course. But I think they're still fairly accessible for makers, because I don't think like something like the S3. I mean, we're not talking about 5 figures here. We're talking about 4 figures.
Yeah.
And when I started being interested in 3D printers back in like 2006 ish,
Yeah.
I mean, that was the price of a like 5 figures was the price of a put it together yourself type kit, from parts everywhere on the internet. So it's not like it's not like it's out of range of a maker. It's just that I understand that the business sales might be a little bit more a bigger part of the business these days.
And of course, if you also have to compete, right? So if your printer is literally 10 times as expensive as another printer, it's a tough sell, right? And then especially towards a maker, where I've often also told people when they ask me like, "Hey, what printer should I get?" And I'm like, "Yeah, as a maker, maybe not an Ultimaker, because your time is free." And I think that's the main difference, right? If your time is free, by all means, get a kit that requires a lot of tinkering, because your time's free, right? So why would you pay money to get time in return? That's just not really a good investment, I would say. It's not a good trade-off, is I guess what I'm trying to say, right?
Absolutely.
And also from the tinkering, I think you can also learn quite a bit, as frustrating as it of course might be if it's failing.
Yeah, typically I recommend printers, like basically I say you shouldn't listen to me because I'm a cheap ass. But what I say is, if you have a relatively high tolerance for tinkering, then you get yourself an Ender 3. If you have a low tolerance for tinkering, then you get yourself like a Prusa. And then if you have like something that just critically needs to work, that's when I say you need to step up to something like the Ultimakers. Like if the thing is critical, timelines are critical, you need a machine that has that sort of criticalness built in. I still think the Prusas might be able to achieve that, but I mean, it's different. They're open. They're not in a, they're not in a fully enclosed volume. They don't have, options for air exchanging and stuff like that. It's just not the same class of. printer.
Yeah, and then also if you look at in the case of Ultimaker, the amount of print profiles that you can get, for instance, due to the marketplace is also really big, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's also it's also a lively discussion, of course, in the 3D printing world. Is it the slicer? Is it the settings? It's it's both really, and that's I think also something that's very underestimated by a lot of the makers. Whereas they say, oh yeah, I got this thing to print with Cura, and I didn't got this to print with Prusa Slicer, or of course the other way around. And in most cases, it's just, how well did you tune it, and how well did the defaults match with what you wanted to do.
Or even the tolerances that you induced by putting together your printer, right?
Yeah,
Some people don't even have a flat enough surface to ensure a square build.
Yeah, that too. And of course, it could even be that I like to call this the waterbed problem, right? So every time you press somewhere, the water pops up somewhere else. And that's also a thing, of course, with slicing. You could very well have that certain bugs, because, any sufficiently complicated piece of software is going to have bugs. There are no exceptions to that. So it could very well be that you have certain bugs that either accidentally remove certain negative behaviors in the hardware or the firmware of your printer, or of course amplify it. And then that's even further aggravated by that certain settings can also influence whether or not certain bugs actually pop up, etc., etc. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
totally get that. Especially like I said, I have this difficult printer. A company sent me a printer for review, but it's not a company that anybody knows.
Yeah.
And on Cura, no matter what I did, I changed so many settings. I have like 30 benchies off this thing. And I just couldn't get this thing to print well. It would always layer shift. It would do all sorts of weird things, and all the belts are tight. I had no idea. I switched to Prusa Slicer, and it works flawlessly, except now it pauses between layers. Like I haven't. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't gotten down to it to diagnose
If it's
it. But
layer
it's so weird.
shifts, I might actually know what it is.
Oh, I'm listening.
Yeah, so Cura is one of the few slicers that has acceleration and jerk control to the extent that it does. So weird acceleration settings, right? That means, and especially the jerk, means that you're putting a lot of like sort of sudden stops and starts to it. So if you have layer shifts, it might be an indication of that, right? So because you're just giving it like a punch. Hey, you're giving your head a punch all the time, and that's of course the moment where if the pulleys are not completely right, or etc., where you can start shifting.
I have played with the acceleration and the jerk settings in both directions, and I even move them in opposite directions of each other. And for whatever reason, this printer is, I don't know, it might be cursed. I actually told the company that they need to check into the firmware. But they shipped me an old version of Cura, a very old version of Cura, which I couldn't take off of the USB drive because it was corrupted.
Oof.
And so I used the current version of Cura and then set up a profile and all this stuff because it's an unknown printer.
Right.
And so then I was troubleshooting, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to try. I opened up their G code they sent as a example, which prints just fine. And it was sliced in an old version of Prusa Slicer. But I'm like, why would you send me Cura if Prusa is what you've sliced your demo? Anyways,
I've seen this so often at conventions where people clearly use prints, companies showing prints that were clearly not printed on their machine.
Oh, definitely.
I've seen that so often. And then, we used to actually make a game out of it where we were just like sort of asking all these annoying questions at like salespeople who knew nothing about 3D printing, and then asking them like, oh, so, and how's this printed then? Like pretending to not know. I've even seen it as far as where they had SLA prints on an FFF printer.
Yikes.
And I was like, oh no, he did it. But I've seen it. Yeah.
So what kind of stuff have you coded in Cura? Because you've worked on Cura quite a bit, right?
Yeah. So on and off. I've also done other projects within Ultimaker. So I've also developed a structured light scanner. Unfortunately, at a certain point, the project was put on hold, or indefinitely on hold. But I also did firmware for a while. But yeah, I mean, bunch stuff that I coded in Cura. Yeah, lots of things really. Yeah,
So there's new Lightning supports, right? Was
yeah.
that
No,
new?
that wasn't one of mine. That was actually that's two of my colleagues did that, and that was actually also the result of what we call within Ultimaker a hackathon. So that's sort of loosely inspired on the famous 10% rule that a few companies have, or in varying degrees. And then every so often we have a big hackathon we're originally people from R&D, but now we're expanding into the entire company. We're basically so people just have to pitch an idea, and then only so the rest of the colleagues can only give like feedback on it, but nobody actually gets to tell you whether or not the project can actually go ahead, as long as it has value for the company. So that would be the only reason why people can say no, you're not allowed to do that. But other than that, even if nobody else believes you, if you think it's a good idea to work on it, here's the time, go and prove it to us. And the Lightning Infill was one of those projects, and I'm also very happy to see that we also managed to incorporate it into mainline Cura.
Yeah, that's actually, it's pretty sweet. I have not got a chance to try it yet. I've been doing a lot of sort of hardline modeling. So
Yeah.
I've been designing the updated parts for my 3D printed snowspeeder, which was
Yeah.
all sliced. The version 1 was all sliced on Cura, an older version of Cura, and
Yeah.
the current one is on this version of I think I'm at 4. I don't know. It's relatively new, 4.1, 4.12.0.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when I'm in the middle of a project, I have this thing where I do not update any software.
That's
It's
smart.
bitten me before. Yeah.
But we put considerable effort in making sure that you can run multiple Cura versions side by side, because in the old days you couldn't. We really noticed that made people very antsy, especially of course to try out beta versions. Because of course, because we support so many printers, it's impossible, of course, to print to test everything. So we really rely on, of course, community to test these kind of things. So we put a lot of effort in making sure that you can run versions side by side, because otherwise, nobody would ever try something out, and then you get into catch-22. Like, you need people to try it out to get good software, but nobody's going to try it if it's not good software. So
Yeah, I guess this would be a good point in the podcast for you to maybe explain what a slicer actually does. I mean, you and I have a vague idea. I have a decent idea what it does. You probably have a very good idea what it does, but some of my listeners, they're not into 3D printing. So maybe you can tell us what Cura actually does for a hobbyist 3D printer.
I'm first gonna start off with a bit of a bombshell here. A slicer is a complete misnomer for what a slicer does. So we as a, I don't know, society is perhaps a bit too much of a bold claim to make, but we should have never called it a slicer. Right? The slicing is actually referring to cutting the 3D model up in these thin horizontal planes, right? But that's the smallest part of what a slicer is actually doing. So, but what essentially all the slicers are doing is they're cutting it up like a sort of a layered cake, right? And they make these 2D polygons. And the main reason for that is simplicity, right? So you cut a model up into 2D shapes, and that's mostly because the math regarding looking at 2D shapes is just so much easier. And then once you have these 2D shapes, you basically go to something that I like to call the lawnmower problem, and that's basically, given a lawn, how do I drive my lawnmower over it in an as efficient and in quite often also as appealing way possible. But of course, with 3D printing, you have a number of extra problems, because you're not cutting something away with a lawnmower. You're trying to place something.
When people see those bundles of rolled up grass, this is kind of what you're doing with 3D printer. You're trying to, put as much grass down as efficiently as possible per 2D shape.
Yeah.
And you also do these weird things where you control where the head, it's user controllable, that you don't want the molten plastic to go over the outside lines, for
Yeah.
example. So you see that on your model.
Yeah, but that's also where, of course, it gets really interesting, because it's not just a computer science problem, right? It's and it's also not just a chemistry or a material problem, and it's not just a mechatronics problem either. It is the combination of all of the above, because of course different plastics, they behave differently, especially on different temperatures. So all of those things combined, that's what makes a good 3D print, and that's also, of course, what makes it so incredibly tricky. Because if you have a great slicer but you have rubbish hardware and really bad material, there's no way that you're going to get a good print. And you can make any combination where one of them is rubbish, and you're just going to get a rubbish result.
Absolutely. And then you've got people like Billy Rubin, for example, that start exploiting the slicer's code to try to make aesthetic, bottom and top layers now, because now she wants to lay the bead down in a certain direction. So in the maker community, you've got all kinds of people, and Cura kind of has to be okay for all of that.
So we actually have a very funny story about that. So at a certain point, we found a bug in the Cura engine where if you would have two models that were overlapping, then it would print both of them, right? But that would obviously cause all kinds of issues, right? Because then you were printing with two different colors, and then say that you accidentally made a mistake and two objects were overlapping. So it would print on the same piece twice, and obviously you can't. So, it would get all kinds of pressure in the nozzle because it would be trying to push material out and it couldn't. And then, of course, that would, at a certain point where it had the first moment where it moved outside of the thing you were printing again, then suddenly all that material would burst out. So you would get all kinds of horrible results from that. So we were very pleased with ourselves that we found that issue when we fixed it. So we did that, and then we got a very mad user saying, yeah, I was trying to print these Squirtle models, and I have like yellow and blue on my printer, and I was using this bug for the pieces that I want to print it in green, because he would add the model twice and then print one of them at 50% flow and the other on 50% flow, and then both of the nozzles would actually mix the color on the build plate to get green, and that way he could use a dual color printer to get three colors. And we were awesome. So impressed by that I swear, I can still remember talking to that about my colleagues, and we're like, we have to put this shit back. So we actually added an entire new sort of setting that allows you to define the behavior on what it should do if it overlaps. And interesting enough, later on, it also spawned a whole bunch of people who were trying to do all kinds of other crazy things by trying to get materials to stick together, and then what kind of strategies would you need if something doesn't want to stick, and then you try to layer them one layer on another, or different kinds of patterns to make sure that to materials that really don't want to stick together, that you can still get them to stick together. So that was a really happy little accident. But that was mostly because somebody was doing something crazy that we didn't know about and got a bit upset that we suddenly removed the capability, even though we didn't even know that. We saw it as a bug, really, and it was a bug if you look at it.
Yeah. That's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that I appreciate that most of, probably all slicers do, that it wouldn't have happened if it was developed by a company like Apple first, is that I want two things out of my software. One is I want it to be simple.
Yeah.
And two, I want it to get out of my way if I want to make changes.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at the Cura UI right now because I'm talking to you, but you can select, right, whether you want a simplified version or a complicated version. So if I'm a beginner, or if I'm counseling a beginner, I can say download Cura, put it on the PLA recommended settings and give it a try.
Yeah.
Or if I know they have a specific machine, I can be like, look, you're printing on glass, you probably want a brim. So put or a skirt. So add a skirt to it. And these things are simple enough to change as long as you sort of know a little bit about it. So you can come in as a total beginner set everything on the default, and you probably will have a good print. And then later on, as your skill grows, the software is the exact same. You
Yeah.
don't have to upgrade software. It's one software for
Yeah.
kind of everyone. So I have to
That was very
give a shout out.
intentional on our side to do it like that.
That's awesome.
It was also a big fight, I have to say. Like, it was especially the amount of settings that we have. That was we've had varying we have of course varying UI people and UXers working on this, and this was something that was often a point of contention, where they of course felt that simplifying was the thing to go, and we were mostly like, yeah, that is true, but you know what's more annoying than a piece of software that I don't understand is a piece of software that I understand and it doesn't let me do what I know needs to be done.
So frustrating.
And that has been sort of, yeah, calling it a fight is perhaps also, it's also putting this negative load on it, but that has been sort of like, there's been a lot of friction there. Whereas we went like, yeah. So we need to make steps to make it understandable and simple. But we're not at the point where it's as easy as, 2D printing. And then I even have to say, I always fight with 2D printers and not so much with 3D printers. So, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Good UI can make a difficult task easier, but that's not the same as being able to make it easy. And I think it sounds like a sort of nuance there, but it's a big difference, really.
No, I get it, because leave it to bad software to make an easy task difficult.
Yeah.
That's entirely what it is. I mean, I used to play, since high school, I played World of Warcraft, for example, and I took a break a couple of years ago, and I got back into it last year, and the simplification of the game had ruined it for me. Like, everything just became so like, it felt like they rounded all the edges, but for someone that was returning from a more complex game, I felt like I wasn't playing anymore. I felt like the game was playing itself. So every little thing that I wanted to do, the game was fighting me on, and it's like, come on, guys, like, stop this. And I'm really happy that makers made slicing software, because if someone like Apple, and I'm throwing Apple under the bus here. If someone like Apple would have made slicing software, you would upload your object file to it, and then it would print. There wouldn't be any like settings to tweak. It would.
Yeah, there are slicers out there that do that, right? But yeah, I mean, that's also like, because Cura wasn't started by Ultimaker, right? It's sort of Ultimaker just adopted Cura.
Correct.
Like we didn't start it. It was started by Dade. And he started in his own time because he was just, fed up with the slicers at the moment. Because then, you pretty much had like SkeenForge, and oh my god, SkeenForge was horrible, right? I mean, we learned a lot from it, but it was so slow. Right? It generally took you the same amount to slice something as it took you to print something. So the first versions of Cura, that when Cura didn't have its own engine, we used SkeenForge, and then we actually had a functionality in Cura where you could queue slices, right? So you could prepare a slice and then put it on a queue, so it would be done when you could start your next print. And that's something that we can't even really imagine anymore being so slow. But it often took like 8 hours or something to slice like a complex model or something.
The dark ages.
Yeah, it was really dark ages, because the entire slicer was written in Python. And now I love Python as a coding language, but that's the wrong decision to make.
What's it written in now? I'm assuming some version of C.
Yeah, so the engine is in C++, but the entire front end is the front end is in Python. But parts of it are written in C++ with bindings towards Python. And the main reason that we went for Python is mostly speed of development. Python is a really forgiving and fast language to code in, even if it's not the fastest language to run. So we also wanted to prevent premature optimization, right? So what we did is we generally we build it in Python, and then if we find bottlenecks, we try and fix those specific bottlenecks, and then in some cases then move some of the code over to C++.
That makes sense. C++ runs a lot closer to bare metal than Python.
Yeah,
I think.
and of course, and Python also has this thing called a global interpreter lock, so it can't ever be truly multi-threaded.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, it can have multiple threads, but only one of them will be running at the same time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, are you saying that that Cura slices on more than one thread?
Or, yeah, the engine does, but not on Mac.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, because yeah, I mean, people told me that I shouldn't be so mad at Apple all the time, but I mean, Apple is great for consumers, but it's a nightmare for developers. It's almost like they actively are trying to make the lives of developers hard. I think developing for Apple is probably the thing that costs us the most effort if I look at all the operating systems.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, they're a bit of a walled garden, aren't they?
Well, if only that. But, for recently we were actually looking into making sure that we could also do multi-threaded slicing to a degree, because you can't really do everything in slicing multi-threaded, because a large part of it is also is inherently sequential. You have to wait on the results of the previous layer. So, you can't really do everything multi-threaded, but there's some parts that you can make multi-threaded. And then we recently found out that, the standard compiler for OS X, Clang, didn't support things in the C++ 17 standard. Even though that they claim that they support the C++ 17 standard, they just don't implement everything. So it's not that we don't want to, it's just, again, that's this bit of software where it can do it because all the other compilers can do it, but it just won't let you. And it's so frustrating.
Has there been a bit of a programming push to make it compatible with the Apple M1 silicon, or has the...
Yeah, so that's yet another thing where I dislike the way that Apple does business, because as far as I see it, the thing that they launched, and it's in a sense also laudable that they dare make such a big change, right? But on the other hand, they also have, of course, the reputation and sort of the force of who the fuck they are, right? I mean, they're the largest company in the world, right? I mean, or at least
highest valued, at least, yeah.
And at least also, of course, in reputation, right? So if they say something is ready for prime time, and it's not, who do you think they're going to believe?
Yeah, of course.
And that's also the thing that what happened with the M1, right? So they said, oh, we make this Rosetta Stone and then everything will work. Okay, cool. But it didn't. It doesn't.
Absolutely.
And then some of the things that we did don't work. And then a lot of people get mad. Oh, you need to fix that. I was like, yeah, I understand that, but it's a lot of work, man. So yeah, we're working on that. But yeah, we also had to wait. And of course, libraries that we depend on. And then of course, once they're done, that's the moment when we can start. So, then you have this sort of serial process where, one thing is waiting on the other, and only then that other process can start. And then you have, so it's this sort of weakest link chain. But, we can finally start on getting the M1 stuff fixed. So, if all goes well, knocking on wood here, it should be for the 5.0 release that we will be able to officially support the M1. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And yeah, just for anybody not following, I'm a little bit of a tech nerd, but the Apple used to run on Intel silicon. So they used to have Intel CPUs in all of their products, and then they moved on to make their own silicon called the M1, and now shortly
it's
the
ARM.
M2.
It's
ARM. It is ARM based. That's true. Yeah. It is licensed ARM stuff, but it's not quite though. Well, it is ARM, but it's their own weird performance versus efficiency architecture.
Allegedly.
Within ARM. Allegedly.
I don't know, right? We have to just take their word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know better than me. I'm not.
And then they have this compatibility layer, which they call Rosetta, where you can use Intel-based instructions. And then allegedly, the Rosetta Stone, it should fully translate that. But, it's super hard to do that. And, even a company like Apple, didn't manage to get it to work in all cases.
Yeah, and we're talking about a $100 billion a year revenue company.
Oh yeah.
So Yeah, I mean, there's challenges out there.
Yeah.
And even for I think everyone's saying, 2022 is the year of Linux, and Linux is working on their own sort of, especially graphics wise, they're doing a DirectX to Vulkan sort of
Yeah.
like direct compatibility thing that they're doing. I mean, it's ridiculous right now what's happening with like basically, I mean, open source and
Yeah.
closed source projects. Like there's a lot happening at the moment.
Yeah.
But do you think, like, how why is Ultimaker still supporting Cura? Because I don't really see a profitability in it. Like I don't
Well,
see they're not making money off Cura,
no,
and
no, no,
obviously
we're not. No.
they're paying people like you
Yeah,
to
they're
keep
paying
maintaining
quite
it.
a few people quite a lot of money to do this. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big investment from Ultimaker to do that. So,
And it's not makers that are buying the machines,
no, no,
like we
no,
said, right?
no, no. So I look. So in the early days, we used to joke within Ultimaker, or at least within software, we used to joke that Cura was paid because we were selling these dongles with it, and these dongles that were made out of plywood. And, these dongles, if you put them in, then you could really use Cura. And also, oh, by the way, these dongles can 3D print. But, the hardware people didn't really thought that was a very funny joke of us.
Okay.
But, that was, in part, that was the main logic of this, right? So the entire idea is that whether or not we're open sourcing it, we're going to need this software, right? So it's sort of like, we're going to invest this money regardless of what we do. Right, because we need that software, and the software isn't there. So if the software's not there, and you need it, then you essentially have one thing you can do, and that's you decide to build it. And that's of course also how Cura started, right? So there was. I also talked a bit about him. There was Deity who was just fed up, and he felt like my time is, hey, it's worth this amount of effort for me to code something that will make my problem go away. So if it's worth at least getting his own problem away at the moment that you release it to everybody and it's going to make more problems go away, then that's then a better investment, right? So with the case, that's how Cura started, and of course, even though that when we drifted, of course, away from the maker community to a certain degree, of course that stuck, and it's a great way, of course, to also hire software engineers. Because especially in Europe, it's super hard to get software engineers. So it's also a combination of a marketing promotional tool, I would say it in that sense.
Okay.
And
I guess community goodwill too.
And community goodwill as well. And I personally would also. I personally see some future in providing custom versions of Cura to other 3D manufacturers. But there has been, at least historically, quite a bit of hesitancy within Ultimaker to do that because people felt that we would be helping our competition. But my main argument is mostly if you look at the amount of Cura clones already out there, they're basically reinventing the wheel in a lot of things, right? So they're setting up their own build systems again, which is, it's pretty tricky to do. They have to learn also, how to actually change things. And then, they change it once and then never update. And then, people go like, oh, it looks like Cura, but it works really shitty. So, they're going to do it anyway. So if you have to take a pick, either they're going to do it and you're not going to get any money, or they're going to do it and you're going to get some money out of it. I know which one of these two choices makes more sense. But, hey, I'm not the business guy. It's not my decision to make. Although, of course, I can have some opinions about it. Yeah.
So let's put this to the ultimate test. What do you use to print at home with?
Yeah, an Ultimaker.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah, no. And now,
I wasn't sure if that was part of your compensation package or not.
Oh, no, it's not formally. But in back in the day, pre-COVID, like every R&D engineer has at least access to one printer, just on their desk. And within Ultimaker, we also regularly had like raffles of like printers that we couldn't sell, or like engineering prototypes and that kind of stuff. And especially with the engineering prototypes, like if you're with R&D, you had a much greater chance to win one because you had, engineering prototypes that were in varying degrees of maintenance. And then people with less technical skills, they couldn't sign themselves in for the ones that needed a little bit of love to get it to work. So the entire contest is a bit skewed towards people in R&D because, they can sign themselves in for, 20 draws of the lottery, basically. And then whereas the other people could only sign themselves for 5. So, if you wait long enough as an R&D engineer, you're going to get lucky. So, yeah.
So you need to put in a firmware fuse for when it goes into these auctions. They have to come see you to unbrick them.
Yeah. So I actually have some custom firmware running on it because I unlocked some things that are normally not unlocked. But I was like, I know where it is. I'm unlocking it. What you got to do? Yeah.
Are you willing to tell what kind of features you're able to unlock?
It's the multi-point bed leveling. You can unlock the multi-point bed leveling on the Ultimaker tree.
Oh, yeah. I see.
Yeah.
So, are you saying that's it's software locked away from customers?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I wasn't happy with that decision.
That differentiation. Yeah. Well, I get it. Like, I'm an automotive guy, and Volkswagen, for example, when you buy a remote engine starter, for the most part, you're buying the remote. And then you're paying a factory tech to go in there and just enable it in software because it's cheaper just to make the exact same multiplex control unit for every single car. And
I mean, it makes sense, but I understand, but I also don't want to criticize it too much because it makes sense. But on the other hand, it also doesn't feel quite right.
Yes, as a consumer, that's exactly my thought too. But again, I guess people have to realize where these machines are going.
Yeah,
and they're mostly when you're facing business. I mean, the difference between 2,000 and 4,000 or 4,000 and 10,000 is not quite the same monetary difference to the consumer. If you're making money off the machine, I mean, it's just it rolls off your back a little bit more. And on top of that, I mean, it's an expense. I mean, you don't get people don't realize. They think that you can just buy $1,000 or $10,000 item and get $10,000 off your taxes. It's not quite how it works.
Yeah,
but you do. I mean, you do. Win back a small portion of that. So it is what it is.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah. So
we don't have to agree with it, but it does make sense.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense. But there's a number of posts also on the forum that explain you how to do it. So,
there we go.
Yeah, it's not a big secret. So
but I guess like I'm assuming. I mean, okay, maybe this will be a wrong assumption, but I'm assuming it runs some sort of variation based on Marlin, or am I wrong?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, well, I mean, so what we originally used, and I don't know what electronics we use now, but we use them at least the Ultimaker 3 used an Olimex, which is basically a bit like a Raspberry Pi, and it runs Debian, and then it talks to like a motion controller, which is still like an Atmega, the 8-bit Marlin version, and then we strip that one down to remove a bunch of the bloat, basically like configurations, and then of course, because the display is actually controlled by the Olimex, the ARM unit. So then of course the 8-bit didn't need to do it, so we stripped all of that out. So it's basically a stripped down version of Marlin. Yeah.
And sorry, you're still running it at 8-bit?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Most of or not most, I won't say most. A lot of the consumer 3D printers are now running 32-bit, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 bits of precision is probably just fine.
Yeah, for a lot of the things, you can get away with it pretty well. And I think it also shows that in quite a lot of cases that people are upgrading things that don't really need upgrading.
Oh, I mean, that's the whole point of being a maker, right? You don't really need to make that new workbench, but it's so much nicer.
I get it, but then that's sort of like the entire point of a home workshop is to upgrade your home workshop. But I mean, as a company, it's a bit different, right? And it kind of reminds me of this thing that somebody once told me is that, a good engineer can build a bridge that will last the ages, but it takes a great engineer to build a bridge that barely stands.
Oh yeah.
And it seems like this contradiction, right? That you need to be better to make it to barely stand. But to over-engineer something to a certain point, or to over-spec it, is actually relatively easy. It's knowing where you can take the shortcuts, I guess, is where the hard things are, right? Because every engineering challenge, and especially I think if you're on a deadline or on a budget or under any kinds of constraints, and within the Cura team is what we call triage. Is you have to make decisions. You can't pick up all of the bugs. So that's why we also call it triage, right? So you have to look at what is the severity of the bug, and then always ask your question: what if I don't? What happens if I don't do anything right now? And then, of course, what happens if I do try to fix it? How much effort will it be? And then you have to make this decision. Yeah, am I going to do it or not? And that's not just in software. I think that's in every part of the machine, right? So every change you want to make, it will involve risks or extra resources or whatever. And yeah, you can't always afford to. So you have to make choices like, oh, are we going to do it? Well, maybe not.
Yeah, my wife is a professional, or was a professional engineer and civil engineer, and she said a good chunk of her program was about dropping costs down because, like you said, I mean, if I had to design a bridge, it would just be one piece solid steel going from one end of the river to the other, and it would cost $1 billion, it would last forever. But it does take a good this. Over-speccing is one thing. Over-engineering is often used the wrong way. We say something is over-engineered when it's really tough and solid, but really, over-engineering is when it's really like if it was designed to last 100 years on the 365th day of the 10th of the 100th year, it's going to crumble. That is right to the minute engineering.
Yeah, but over-engineering in software is often that when you made something way too complicated or way too configurable for what you actually wanted it to do.
Right? Okay, so in software it is used the way that people say colloquially. Then.
Yeah. So over-engineering in software is generally, so if you were to build like this entire structure and then all you wanted to do is, I don't know, like cut bread or something like that, right? So why did you build this entire, factory floor filling machine with all kinds of possible extensions on it when it only ever had to cut bread, right? So why did you build all that? It doesn't make any sense.
True. Yeah. So, man, we spent 48 minutes talking about Cura.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to go this way, but I guess this is the way it goes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of software, right? So you can talk a lot about it.
True. But let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about some stuff you do in your personal life. You talked a little bit about LARPing in the green room. Can you explain to people, first of all, what what LARPing is, and then we can talk about what you've built for it.
Yeah, so LARP stands for live action role playing. And the abbreviation LRP is also used without the action, but there's all kinds of people who are having debates about which is the correct one, and I don't really care all that much. And it's as you also mentioned already, it's the easiest analogy I can make is like it's a bit like Dungeons and Dragons, but then live. But that's also really short selling it, right? Because that's just a variant of LARP, right? So. And that's the most, I think, famous one in that sense is, hey, you dress up as a character and you play that character for an extended period of time. And then generally there's also like a rule system with like, what kind of magic is there, or are there potions, and what do they do if you drink them? How many hit points do you have? And, how do you repair armor, et cetera, et cetera. But there's other types of it as well where you have different settings. So where you go, I don't know, for like a cyberpunk setting or purely a historical setting or a pure science fiction. But there are also more like experimental ones where there's even a bit of a cheek and tongue one where you play. I think the LARP's called Shrimp, and you actually have to play that in a pool. and then you play inhabitants of an aquarium. Yeah, and then they have this entire thing where, you know, people play shrimp in an aquarium, and then there's also a group of shrimp that are very religious, who believe that the great hands that come feed them are some sort of divine entity, etc. I've never played that LARP, but I can at least conceptually imagine how that would be also an interesting experience.
I mean, there's
Um,
all types of people, so there
yeah,
needs to be all types of
yeah,
LARP,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But there are also LARPs that, you know, really go into you know, exploring, I don't know, like the deep stuff like human nature and love and friendship and betrayal. So yeah, I mean, it's about as varied as you know, game design, both on you know, tabletop RPGs, as you know, digital game design, or you know, board game. It's across the spectrum, really. So yeah, you can do all kinds of pretty crazy stuff there. Yeah.
So let's start here then. So what setting is your favorite type to LARP in?
Oh yeah. Well, to LARP in, I yeah, I think it's across the board, really, because all of them have something that you can get out of it. But I personally also like to play around with tech a lot, right? Because this whole notion of like how in most cases, like if you take something like a fantasy setting, right? And then in most cases, if there is something magical, right? So say there's like a magical shrine, right? Then often you have to get like a game master, like a referee there, and then you know, you have to say like, oh yeah, I cast this spell on the thing, and then you know, the game master says, oh okay, so if you use that spell, then you know, this is what you find, and then you can say, oh, but I start looking for, I don't know, how the energy flows go, and then you know, that's sort of like the skill challenge that you have, right? Asking the right questions, understanding what's being said to you. But it does kind of break that immersion that you're having, right? Because then you're no longer playing to be a mage, you're explaining to somebody who's sitting next to you what your character's doing, and it kind of also breaks the moment, right? Because all the people that are looking at you see you just talking to, you know, a referee. And, you know, that's also the part, of course, where, you know, a bit of technology and a bit of clever engineering can come in, because in quite a lot of cases, you know, you kind of also want the magic to follow certain rules, right? So if something happens, something else needs to happen, and that's where the real cool stuff comes up, right? So where you can play around with like RFID tags, and then you hide them in some kind of magical crystal or something, and then you know, every time you put the magical crystal on the altar, suddenly the crystal starts glowing, and that's also the real fun part in that, is because then especially because if people are very used to, you know, the old way of doing it, where you had to get a referee to do something, and then suddenly you can just give them an object, and then they ask, yeah, what does it do? And it's like, I don't know, go find out, go try something. Yeah, don't you need to be there? Nope, just do something. And then you can also see when, you know, the first time that it actually does something, you know, as if by magic, because they don't realize that there's actually technology in there. There's this great sense of wonder with these people, that they see that it actually does something, yeah, as if by magic, right? Yeah.
So is this something that you have built? Have you built
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
these quote unquote magic
I've built
items?
stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I think one of my favorites. Oh man, it's like having to pick favorites as a parent, right? But um, one of the ones that I probably spent the most blood, sweat, and tears on, and that was actually also on a LARP so far, has been is yeah. So for those of you who are familiar with the Great Zoltan, is this sort of this robot.
Fortune teller.
Fortune teller, right? So it's this robot fortune teller, and it's in this glass box, and then it's like the torso of a fortune teller, and then you could put a coin in there, and then it would do like this motion, and its eye glows, and you get some ominous sound, and it prints out this card where it predicts your future. And at a certain point, we were asked for a LARP event that was set during the Prohibition in America to make a machine like that. And the idea would also be that, you know, the thing was actually haunted, and that it would actually be able to truly predict the future, right? Or at least predict, you know, nefarious things. And, the original thing that, these people who came to us, who bless their hearts, made a great LARP, but knew nothing about the technology needed. Their original pitch was really, we need like this under the hood. We want this robot arm to pick up the right card and then deposit it. And it was like, we were like, okay, stop right there. Let us trouble ourselves about the actual, the actual solution. You just tell us what you want to achieve. They were like, okay. We just want a creepy robot that spits out predictions. We were like, cool. We can make that work. We also got this ridiculously low budget of, I think, like 150 euros, which...
Holy crap.
That's nothing.
Yeah, that is
That's
nothing.
And we built like a robot with like 5 or 6 degrees of freedom with it. Because we went just like dumpster diving and, raiding because, we still had a bunch of servos left. And we built this creepy ass robot doll in like a cupboard that we got from like a flea market and all kinds of stuff. And so we had this entire moving robot with like a mechanical keyboard in front, where we also had like laser cut wooden and brass keys on it. And then the thing that we finally came up with is that it would be a machine where they could walk up to, and then they could type a name in it. And then, once they pressed enter, the machine would do its little dance and it would spit out a card. But we just hit like, the standard HP cheap ass 30 euro printers underneath it. And with a bit of clever routing, we could actually get the card out of it. And we already printed the backside of those cards with tarot cards. And that was also like a red herring because we couldn't actually control what the back end of the tarot cards were. But we figured, look, it's tarot. Everybody's going to read anything in it. It doesn't really matter what card you put on the back. Just make it random. People will make something out of it themselves. And what the machine would actually do is if you type a name in, if it recognized your name, it would check in the database and then figure out if it had a prediction for you. And depending on what escalation level the machine was on, it would start spitting out more and more nefarious things about the past or potential future of that person. And we were able to write all of those things because we knew what because they were pre-written, or at least to a certain degree pre-written characters, because we knew all their backgrounds. So we could basically use that to sort of draw all of the old skeletons out of their closet. And yeah, that was an amazing success because the first time people thought that it was just a still doll. So the first time it moved, because it also had this horrible servo whine in it that we managed to able to sort of hide a little bit with the wood creaking when it was moving. So the first time that people started typing in it, and they didn't realize it was an actual moving machine because we managed to hide it so well. So they typed something in, and then we had like 15 to 20 people who just collectively gasped and took a step back as this machine was sort of cackling and printing out a little card. And that was a really great moment for all that work to come to that. Yeah,
that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And you were there to see
so much unreasonable time on this. It's like, we spent so much time on getting that to work. I think that cost me easily like months at the end of my life, the stress to get that thing done in time. But I still think it's worth it. Yeah.
And you were there to see it like actuate for the first time or whatever?
Yeah, because we were also playing like a non-player character on that LARP, which is also what we generally tend to do if we build a prop for a LARP. To that extent, because things can and will fail. So we then also try to sort of invent roles that give you sort of like an alibi to work on the thing, right? So if it's broken, out of the game because I don't know, a bug or a loose wire or I don't know, faulty power supply. If you have like an in-game sort of alibi to work on it, it doesn't break character. Right, because then it's also the character is trying to fix it, and that also sort of adds to the immersion, right? So, and I think that's also a really interesting part about building these things for LARP is because then you also have to think about how are you gonna do the smoke and mirrors, right? How are you gonna get away with a really cheap trick and make it look as if it's something so much bigger than it actually is? Because at the end, of course, we could reveal how we did it. And then even a lot of engineers that were in the LARP themselves, they were like flabbergasted with sort of the tricks we pulled to make it look way cooler than it really was. So it's a bit like stage magic, I think, as well, right? sort
Yeah,
of.
it's got to be if it's
Yeah.
all in presentation.
Yeah. So presentation is a really important part of it, and yeah, that's also interesting. And we also put like super over-engineered stuff in it as well. So it had like a Wi-Fi interface with also like an admin panel where, the game masters could also control the thing remotely, and then also like add custom cards to it. So if they saw a player standing there, they could suddenly make it start spitting out cards, even though that they didn't activate it, and all kinds of weird shit like that. Yeah.
So does this thing still live,
Yeah,
or
it still lives. Like it's yeah. So I'm doing this together with my twin brother, and we couldn't we couldn't make ourselves throw it away. That's it. In all honesty, yeah. But yeah.
you should ask a bar or something if you can
Yeah, but
put it on display.
it's also really finicky, right? It
Oh, I
needs,
see.
yeah, it's not really made. It can run for a certain amount of time, like without anybody sort of giving it some proper love and care. But I think this is also part like we knew that the first time we built it, it had to last exactly 3 days, and then with the complexity of the task that we set ourselves, you just want to try and spend as little time as possible on the things that are not really needed, and as much time as possible on the things that have an impact. So yeah,
That's really impressive that you built something that that complex. And in fact, I'll put in the description below the link to the Facebook group where people can actually see this thing. I don't think you have any videos on there. I was going through
no,
it
there
quickly.
are.
There are. Okay, excellent.
Of the machine itself as well. And we were also actually able to rent it out a few times towards other LARPs as well. So it's been on like three LARPs right now, 3 runs at least. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So I hope people will go into the description and go check it out, because I've seen pictures of it. I didn't know there was video, but I've seen pictures. So I'm thoroughly impressed that it does what you say it does. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah. For instance, also the mask that we use for if people are actually going to look at it, it's just a cheap Halloween mask that we bought for €3, I think. And we just painted it to make it look like that. And that's also the smoke and mirror. People actually thought that we spent all this time in getting like a custom cast mold mask, and then it's just a cheap Halloween mask that we found in a store. Because actually we found the mask first, and then we decided to make this an old lady because we thought the mask was so cool.
And I mean, it's kind of disingenuous that it's €150. It might have been €150 in parts, which is
not even that. No. It's €150 in parts that we bought new.
Yeah, there we go. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because it looks like $1 million. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
And Facebook is saying I have to log in.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's not gonna happen. I don't do Facebook.
Yeah.
But yeah, very impressive stuff. Like that's incredible. I wish I had those kinds of skills and that kind of drive to build something like that. I've always wanted to make some sort of fancy like a movable, like remote control skeleton type thing for Halloween. But it's not going to happen in the near future. But at some point,
it's
scare the crap out of people.
It was surprisingly easy to build the actuation, actually.
Yeah, just using regular RC servos, I assume.
Yeah. And we actually had rope running through the screen itself, because in game it was also like this machine, this clockwork automaton that was made then. And we were like, oh, how are we going to do this without having like a tiny rope clearly moving the arms? And we were like, you know what? No, that's not a bug. That's a feature, right? If it looks like, it's actually a rope that's moving the hands, that makes actually a lot more sense, because that's, how somebody without, actual servo engines and, pistons and all the whole shebang would probably have also done it in that time. So, yeah.
So it ended up as part of the
package. Yeah, it's actually neat. The system is so it's an arm that can swivel, and then we could also pull the rope up. So that's how we got an extraordinary amount of freedom, where the robot could move its hands, because it can move a hand up and down and then sort of left and right. But then because of that, you got this really cool swinging motion, and because the elbows were also they could articulate, but not automatically. But because of the arms could move, you got this very natural motion. even though that it was actually only two motors doing it. Again,
That's
tricks.
that's really cool. I
Yeah.
think if you'd ever get the chance to, I think a nice YouTube video showing the mechanics behind and what your
Yeah.
thought process behind it, I think could be really nice to see. And
Yeah.
you'd probably get tens of thousands of views on a video like that.
Yeah.
At least I would promote it. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah, so and yeah, we made a whole bunch of props in this ballpark, and our current project, which unfortunately has been taking for the past 3 years now, is a LARP called Mission Together, and that's a big LARP in Spain where we're the people doing all the prop building, and we're luckily we also have a lot bigger budget. And there, yeah, we're also going to build like a space simulator and like a med bay and a science scanner with all kinds of crazy, like so adding RFID scanners to it, and then also having like valves that you can manipulate, and then there's also things in the base change, and that you also have to reroute like sort of fluids throughout the base to do cooling and heating up stuff. But yeah.
That sounds like quite the project. Like,
It is, and I think, were it not for Corona, we would have not been able to make, I think, even like 30% of the stuff that we wanted. So Corona, in that sense, has been a bit of a blessing in disguise. Yeah,
and that's because you
more
have
time.
more
Yeah,
time, less
yeah.
less work to do, basically.
Well, the same amount of work, but more time to actually do it. Because yeah, we've had to postpone it a few times. Because it's also an international LARP, so there's going to be people from all across the world that are going there, specifically to Spain, to participate there. And then, of course, yeah, the past 2 years, even though that in some cases there was sort of this calm in the storm, then yeah, in a lot of cases, then not everybody could go there, or it was super unclear. And then in some cases, other people could get stuck and then be in a quarantine in a foreign country, or all kinds of bullshit. So yeah, we had to postpone it for 2 times already. So yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Really puts a damper on things. I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Corona didn't affect me too much. I'm mostly unemployed at the moment because my semester got pushed back. But
Yeah.
other than that, I mean, the wife and I, we don't go anywhere, so it didn't affect us. But yeah, it sucks that a lot of people got affected in very negative ways.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from me catching COVID, I guess that was not good either.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to, at least to my knowledge, be able to dodge it. But if I got it, I didn't notice it, which is entirely possible. But
yeah, I wouldn't recommend going to get it because
no. Oh no.
It's
No,
been well
I got
over.
vaccinated and boosted at the exact moment when I was able to.
Yeah, I got vaccinated when I could. I was basically, with the boosters became available here at the end of December for people my age in my early 30s.
Yeah.
And that's when I got COVID. It was around that time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So it's been, some of my regular listeners know this, but it's been 2 months now and I still have that long COVID symptoms. So
yeah.
every once in a while I'm out of breath, but it's been getting better and better, I think. So that's good. But I know there's some people who are still like they're out of breath going up the stairs up to 6 months after their infection. It's crazy.
Yeah. I know some people from LARP who also got long COVID, and I think he got it even in like the first wave, so that's almost 2 years ago, and he's still struggling with some health issues.
That's brutal. Like
And
that's
he's
why
like
I really
30 or something, right? So he wasn't like, I don't know, like he didn't have any other health issues until that moment.
Yeah, it's brutal. That's why I don't really agree with those people that say, who cares, you're going to survive it. Yeah, but it's like, what kind of life are you going to live after you survive it? Like, how about that?
Yeah, hey, if 1 out of 100 M&Ms is poisonous,
I wouldn't buy any M&Ms.
I wouldn't buy them.
Exactly. Listen, we're already at an hour and 10, and I usually throw a question to every one of my guests. Can I throw you that question?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So the question goes, you get a government grant to start the business of your dreams. It does not have to be profitable, but it does have to provide either a service or a product.
Uh-huh.
What kind of business would you start?
Yeah, I think that's fairly easy for me because this is a joke I've been making all along. What I really want to make is a fire-breathing T-Rex, like a mechanical one. So that's technically a product.
It is, yep.
Yeah,
And it
so
doesn't
I,
matter.
I
The
would.
show is a service too.
Yeah. So I think that would be really cool. But that's pretty much also what I've been doing with frivolous engineering, right? It's making these kind of props to. I don't know. I've always found that sort of this sense of. I always enjoyed inspiring a sense of amazement in people, and that's also what I try to do with those props and those, especially the technical props that I make. It's not just about making them look good, but also make people go like, "Wow, how did that work?" And then sort of being so very smug about it if you can explain that sort of the magic was actually really simple. So, yeah,
So you'd be
yeah.
building one of these or like
I don't know, at
infinite?
least one, because it's a lot of work. I'm very bad at estimating how long things take, but I've learned to not really trust uh, my sort of initial gut feeling where it says, "How hard can it be?" And then I've learned, well, I'm not daring to say that I'm an adult now in that sense, even though that I've been an adult for a long time now, but I feel I've grown up a little bit since then. But yeah, something like that, sort of like, I don't know, like robots or something in like yeah, or technological. I would definitely still continue to do engineering, and then also probably something that would touch multiple aspects of engineering, because even though that I'm like very much specialized as a software engineer, I really enjoy the part where the area where sort of technologies come together, and that's also what is so incredibly interesting about 3D printing and robotics and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
That's what makers are all about. I mean, the interdisciplinary stuff
yeah,
is the best thing. Like, for example, I am only actually, I would consider myself actually very well skilled in one thing, and that's I'm an automotive technician. I'm a
yeah,
mechanic by
yeah,
trade. I've
yeah.
been doing that for nearly 16 years now, and that is the one thing I would say I am an expert in. But everything else is just dabbling and messing with, and I love that. I'm cool with that. I don't have to be an expert in everything. In fact, I regret a little bit being an expert in auto mechanics. I would rather trade, you know, 10 years of that knowledge for, 2 years of knowledge of, 5 other things. But this is what's great about making, is that you can just go and explore your own sort of skills and build skills and talk to people and gather skills from elsewhere. It's awesome.
But I still think that's why a lot of the interesting stuff is there, because if you also look at like sort of where now all the, and I don't want to advocate patents, because I think patents are bad, but unfortunately as a company you have to participate. um, if you look at like a lot of the patents that in most fields are coming out now, and also in 3D printing, and also the patents that Ultimaker got and is getting, um, most of them are actually where at least one field touches another, and in most cases it's actually where multiple fields touch each other. And it's generally then also the people that have a broader skill set. So generally the people with a T-shaped skill set, right? So a specialization in one thing and then reasonable or working knowledge in the adjacent skill sets. Those tend to be the people that can then work very well with other people that have a different T shaped skill set. And then those people that they can actually find solutions to problems that we have right now. And in almost all cases, they're in this area where these two sort of more traditional fields touch each other.
Absolutely. And, I mean, I've come up with the analogy recently that like a river is the most interesting when it intersects with another body of water. So
Yeah,
like you'll have like a river feeding into a lake, for example, and at the boundary of those two, that's where the fishermen find the fish. That's where the
yeah,
ecologists find the most interesting vegetation. That is where things happen when two homogeneous things start mixing. Then that's where all
yeah.
the interest is, and that's the same thing for the maker movement. I
Yeah.
mean, perspectives are important and skills are important and all this stuff is
That's
important.
also why I really miss the maker fairs, because I would just love walking around them and just randomly go over and then see this super excited person with their own hobby project, and then just talk about them with, you know, whatever weird and potentially unrelated sort of experiences or skill sets that I have. And then yeah, quite often you also had these sort of magical epiphanies that would otherwise not have happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think you can even tell which companies are more innovative by the types of skills they hire for, right? Like if you look at, I don't know if you watch Linus Tech Tips on YouTube at all,
No, no.
but he's a tech company. They started in tech reviews,
Hmm.
but at this moment they're hiring all sorts of people. They're hiring writers, they're hiring people who are good at machining, they're hiring electronics people, they're hiring all sorts of people because they said, like, if they want to grow, they need to have interdisciplinary stuff, right?
Yeah.
It can't be you can't just be into tech and make tech videos. You need an angle on stuff,
Yeah.
which is what those other people are for,
It's
basically.
also the hardest thing to do, right?
That's very true.
And I think that's
100%.
also why a lot of companies don't do it, because it's really easy to explain what you are and what you do. If you say, "Oh, I'm a software engineer." Oh, well, what do you do? I build software, right? But if you're then sort of the I can do a little bit of everything, what do you say, right? It's
Yeah,
it's it's
yeah, I had to go through that very recently because I was applying to work teaching high schools,
yeah,
and I'm like, so yeah, I'm a professional mechanic,
yeah,
but I've got this YouTube channel which I deal with electronics. I deal with
yeah.
I make PCBs. I get them sent off to be made. I deal with remote control vehicles. I deal with 3D printing. I deal with CAD design, like
And
all sorts of
and
things.
why
So
were you worried about not being able to design a robot if that's your skill set?
well, because again, because it's like surface knowledge. The problem is that I know where my skills lack,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right?
but you now make the you make the wrong assumption that I knew when I started.
This is true. I did
I
assume that.
didn't.
You know what? You're absolutely right for calling me out on that because this is the same thing that my viewers do to me. They see
Yeah,
my videos and they assume I knew everything to start with, but they don't see. I mean, I try to explain, but it's hard to explain the struggle it
yeah,
takes to make it from point A to point B.
yeah,
So you're absolutely right on that.
yeah. So yeah, the only thing that me and my brother ever do is that we have a flowchart on whose problem it is. So it's basically if you can touch it, it's his problem, and if you can't touch it, it's my problem because my
Nice.
specialization is in software and his is more into hardware. Um, but yeah, other than that, I mean, and even there, it's quite often that he was able to help me with certain software problems because I was just thinking too difficult, right? I was like, oh, but it's going to be really hard. And he could just say, yeah, but, you know, hey, so we can challenge each other on like where to use the smoke and mirrors or where there's a shortcut. And then you're overthinking it, right? Even though that
Yeah.
the other one is technically the specialist, or you know, not even technically, actually the specialist. Yeah,
Sort of does it for a living.
yeah,
Sort of a
you
little
know,
company you may have heard of called Ultimaker.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
Well, yeah, that's very true. And yeah, so maybe I should challenge myself to build a little something something, but it'll be
yeah.
a
Hey,
long term
if
thing.
you ever need some projects, I've got enough LARP events that want stuff built. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also a big fan of open source. Pretty much everything I've designed, I've put the stuff online for
Yeah,
free. Everyone can use it. You know, I could probably make a couple extra dollars per month by selling
yeah.
designs, maybe, or selling finished products, maybe. But to
I
me,
but
it's not worth it.
but finished products, I think, is also somewhat different, right?
I mean, yeah, of course
No, no,
it's
no. But I
different.
mean, I'm mostly more of a fan of selling like atoms than I am of selling bits.
Okay,
I
fair
mean,
enough.
so because bits is basically like it didn't like whether or not you copy it, it's no skin off my back, right?
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't
Whereas
destroy the original.
Yeah, I
It's not
mean, yeah.
actually theft. Kind of weird
Well,
thing.
depends on how you argue it, of course. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's also the kind of thing. I guess it's also because this is how Kira started, right? It started with this notion of like, one person was like, "Yeah, it's worth it to spend the time on it to fix my problem." So everyone else's problem, if it gets fixed, that's yeah, great, right? That's like the cherry on top of the sundae.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I guess even well, yeah. I mean, because if I guess I meant if I started selling physical goods,
Yeah,
then it would be detrimental to have the how-to instructions online and all the files and stuff. But I guess
would
even
it?
not even because a friend of mine, another maker,
Yeah,
he has a free open source, or I don't know if it's open source, but User Spice. Anyways,
yeah.
it's an online user management software,
Mm-hmm.
and he says almost all of his business has come from giving that software away for free
Yeah.
because people say, yeah, you've got great software, but you're probably better at it than me. So here, do you want some money and you can deal
Yeah,
with
but
it?
that's also the same as what Adafruit does, and does brilliantly, right? Like
Yeah, that's very true.
I've bought stuff from them because I saw a really cool tutorial and I was like, yeah, but they have bills of material just in the instruction, and I just can click the links, and then they did all that effort to write this really cool guide for me. So why wouldn't I buy it from them?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point. So I guess in the end, it's time for me to build my animatronic skeleton. Then
Yeah, yeah.
we'll see how it turns out. But for now, though, we are flush out of time. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to tell people?
Yeah, so yeah, we're launching the Cura 5.0 beta soon-ish. In April is the planning. So you could do me and the rest of the maker community a favor by trying it out. And of course, not just the 5.0 beta, but keep on trying it because yeah, we fundamentally redid the slicing algorithm. And to toot my own horn a little bit, that's it's like a massive leap forward in 3D printing because yeah, it's not just new to the industry. The way that we're doing it is new to the world, and not even the big guys like Stratasys and stuff like that, have this. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
That's really neat. And where can people find you personally? Do you want them to go to your Twitter, to your Facebook? What is it?
Yeah, so yeah, GitHub, Twitter, all of these things work.
And then I will put all the links in the description.
Yeah.
And if everyone is watching on YouTube, they have been on the background the whole time with my spinning logo that some people are just now realizing that the logo spins as the as the episode goes on.
Yeah, I think I saw it because I clicked through one of your episodes, and then it's really easy to see because then you're
For sure.
clicking through it, and it's like, oh, it changed. Yeah,
So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I know taking some time out is not obvious for everyone, so I want to thank you for taking some time to speak to me and my audience.
yeah,
And I hope that people will go and check out your stuff because I'm not saying this to butter you up because you're on the podcast. It is very impressive stuff, and I want to thank you for the hard work you do on
yeah,
Cura. I mean, you probably do hard work on Ultimaker stuff too, but I don't really use
yeah,
that. I use Cura.
yeah. Well, I mean, most of the stuff I do for Ultimaker is working on Kira. Yeah.
There we go, and locking out features. Kidding,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah, yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you guys will go check out his stuff. And I hope to see you guys in the comment section, letting James know what's going on.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
It was a pleasure to be here.